Hello and welcome to the Awakened Journey. My name is Debbie Wilson and I am your host. And I am so excited to be here with you today and also with my beautiful guest, the kind and generous Jen Gilchrist. Hello, Jen, and welcome to the Facebook Live.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here connecting with all of you, speaking on my favorite topics.
Yes, we're so excited because we had such an incredible conversation the last time we were together, and we spoke about so many things with regard to empaths and highly sensitive people. And we talked about some of the things in particular was we went over some energy management techniques, which are huge for empaths. We talked about what it means to be spiritually aligned, and how you know whether you're in your body or you're not grounded, not grounded. We talked about so many things, and we kind of focused on maybe more the struggles and how to overcome the struggles of being highly sensitive or being an empath. And so today I thought it would be a great opportunity for us to talk about, okay, now we know we have these different tools. These are different things that we can do. So now let's talk about the upside of being a highly sensitive person, being, an empath, and how you can really use that to your advantage when you're trying to connect. What do you think?
I think that's going to be amazing. I love it.
Perfect. Well, so then let's talk about exactly how we go about doing that. And I'd like to invite everyone who's here to please let us know you're with us. I see there's 7 of you right now. Hi, Kieran. Thank you so much for letting us know that you're here. And any questions that you have. Hello, Risa. Any questions you have for Jen, please put them in the comments and we will answer your questions. So let's get back to what we were saying briefly before this. So yes, let's talk about the positives. How do we connect? How can we use being an empath to our benefit as far as connection?
Beautiful. So, the powerful thing about being an empath, as we spoke of, is that, our receptors, our ability to perceive energy, perceive emotions and the world around us is the volume is already up. So in that way, when we learn how to ground, something magical happens, because when we start to clear out other people's energy, it's like our receptors and our intuitive abilities are already very much connected. And so in that way, when you're empowered in your gifts, you're not feeling overwhelmed and you're actually kind of enjoying that expanded connection to the positives, you're going to feel an extreme range of joy. You're going to have, most of the time traits that come up for those that are highly sensitive and they're feeling great about their energy and their life. You'll feel like, you have a big heart. You're super compassionate, highly creative, it's like creativity flows, right? Wonderful listener, and just able to really be able to connect and understand and hear and know the people that you are, that are in your life, your relationships or your clients.
And isn't it, so if you're, I know one of the big things that they talk about as far as really connecting is you have to be really able to have access to your emotions. You have to have that, you have to be really heart-centered and be in that place to be able to have more of a connection, because it is that sensory piece, because there are so many aspects of connection, right? So one of the things you had talked about is that there's 5 different ways to connect. So how exactly does an empath, maybe more so, or a highly sensitive more so than someone who maybe isn't as sensitive, how are they able to use those different five techniques to gain access to their intuition or to their connection?
Yeah, well, I think just being when you're connected, people sense you. They have this usual sense that they can trust you. So right off the bat, I think people tend to be open. Sometimes I'm sure I hear this a lot. You can let me know in the comments, anybody that's viewing this, people tend to tell you their life stories. Like there's already sort of a level of trust when you are in people's presence, because they feel you and they feel your ability to be present with them in that way. So when an empath and a highly sensitive person is very grounded and very open and in their heart, people just sense, just by being in your energy, it makes them feel good, right? Because they feel seen, they feel heard, and they just get this sense of who you are. Now with your intuition, well, I believe everybody can cultivate your intuition. Sensitive empaths are already very much wired open. So when you are connecting with your intuition, you have a clear communication between your body, your emotions, and your higher self energy. It's like your receptors already dialed up. And so now it's just a matter of really connecting. I think one of the first ones, there's 5 main ways we can touch on, but the first one, and I think for empaths and sensitives, is, your feelings, really trusting the feelings and emotions in your body. And also with that, the clairsentient ability is your ability to also sense and feel the emotions of others. So in that way, you are able to be very tuned into the subtleties of can I trust this person? Or what does my partner need from me in this moment? Like, you're very in tune with the truth of a situation just by being able to sense in your body what your intuition is telling you, or the person that you're with.
So for people who are very sensitive in that way, but maybe because they've been so turned on, as you say, that they've tried to turn it down a little bit. And so, or maybe they've stopped trusting it because, in a lot of ways, highly sensitive people have been told throughout their life, oh, you're just being too sensitive. Oh, you're just, you're making more of that than it really is. But it's because that person is really feeling that. They can really sense it, and maybe other people can't, but they could have a propensity to try to turn that down a little bit due to all the things they've experienced. So is it common then for people to maybe tune out that a little bit when they know that and then they have to try and come back to it?
Well, what I noticed is, and this kind of ties back to our original conversation as well, for those of you that haven't listened, you'll love to check that out, because there's a lot of empowerment tools out. Because I think energetic overwhelm is a thing for every sensitive and empath to a degree, right? Where we do want to do that, where we do unconsciously as a coping sometimes disconnect from our body. And so when you learn to actually connect with your body, ground, and move other people's energy out, that's when you really get to experience the fullness of your gifts without the sense of overwhelm. So I think that recognizing when we start to disconnect and what does it look like, what are my unconscious coping patterns, starts to give you the clue in that when that's happening, so that you can address it. And I think, another point that you really tapped on that's huge is a lot of people are pulling the wool over their own eyes, right? Sometimes they may not realize how they're actually feeling, or you might pick up on the fact that they're running, the person you're with is anxious or overwhelmed. And you may ask the person and they may genuinely say, no, I'm fine, because they are so disconnected. And so this is where, it really does take a level of trust. And I think that sometimes as a children, this happens with our parents. As a sensitive kid, you might ask, hey, mom, are you feeling okay? Oh, I'm fine, honey. And so now there starts to become a disconnect with trusting it. So it really is a journey back to cultivating that trust with yourself, with your intuition, with your emotions, and with your body. And, over time, I think that when you start to cultivate the ability of grounding and tuning out and recognizing what's my energy versus other people's energy, that's a really important distinction and a really important journey for the empath, is to really cultivate that discernment of what's mine and what's others, so that you aren't in that space of feeling overwhelmed. Because when you do have that level of control, I would say, people will often say, well, I don't want to cultivate this more, I might get more sensitive. It's like, actually, you'll have so much more ability to tune in or tune out, or not take in and take on and sponge up and run other people's energy as your own. So I think it's a journey and a process, but the more clear your energy is on a regular basis, the more clear you'll be when it's somebody else's energy instead of your own that you're running, as well as what the actual energy you're picking up on is and means for you or them, if that makes sense.
Right. And you'll be able to trust it a lot more, like you're saying, because if you've been running a lot of if you've been sensing and people are negating what you're saying, then you're right. You absolutely stop trusting, because then it feels like, well, I thought that was what I was feeling off of them, and they said that wasn't true. But then the more you can really trust yourself and maybe not maybe not necessarily putting it out there to say, oh, are you this or are you that? And you're just going with it internally and just as opposed to actually putting it out there. Does that help you to trust more? Does that help the person to be in a better place with that?
I think with feelings, it's definitely an internal journey for sure, like you're saying. And it really does become around just trusting yourself, because some people will, want to put up a facade that everything's fine and not want the world to see what's going on. A lot of people are hiding, the skeletons in their closet, or don't want people to, see things that they either maybe be ashamed of or might be deemed as a weakness, or just not to put a burden on somebody, right? So it is really about you trusting you. And it really just takes cultivating that daily practice by connecting with yourself, connecting with your own emotions. And from there, you'll be able to have that deepening of that trusting within yourself for sure.
Those are really good points and things for us to remember, because you know what, you bring up something really important in that, which we don't know what someone else has going on in their life. And so we may be feeling something and sensing something from them, and it's not something that they want you to know. It's not something they want you to have access to. So there is that piece of our own journey in that, of what do we share, what don't we share, that kind of thing.
Yeah. And what I find for empaths and sensitives is that we kind of tend to almost like, unconsciously are competent at that and reading people, because suddenly, you'll find yourself talking with somebody you don't even know, or maybe a friend, or a client, and you'll just be able to, you'll have a thought about a certain story to share, you'll just kind of be, because you are reading and feeling the energy so naturally all the time, because this is how we are for our own survival, really. As an empath, you are using your senses, and you have for a long time, as a way to know, is it safe, or is what is going on, right? So you naturally will find that you'll say the right thing, or people will often want to tell you their story, or come to you as a confidant with things. And it's because you naturally have that intuitive way of just knowing the right thing to say, knowing what story to share, knowing, or even being just a good listener can be extremely healing for people, which is another, attribute oftentimes of the sensitive person.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Okay, I want to take a quick jump back here, because I see we're getting a bunch of comments. So hello to Elizabeth, who's here from France, Eva from Denmark. Dinah is saying, good afternoon, sisters. I only got halfway through the video and plan to go back to it. So if you answered this already, just disregard. So she would like you to share what's the difference between an empath and a highly sensitive. So if we can just touch on that real briefly, and then I'll go back to the rest of these other comments.
Yeah, there's a lot of main crossover that would work for both. The difference I would say with an empath is typically able to sense and read and discern the emotions of other people, where a highly sensitive person often is an empath, but highly sensitive is really more about their own sensory system and how they are experiencing the world. So not every highly sensitive person is necessarily an empath, although many of them are.
Okay, perfect. And does that answer the question for you, Dina? Let us know if that does. And we have Risa here saying yes, and Kieran has a question for you, Jen. So she wants to know, she's always been highly sensitive, and there's a blessing in it, but sometimes it's scary too. And she wanted to ask, can I be sure I am how can I be sure I'm an empath? Everyone says that she is, but what is that 100% sign? Unconditional love, sensitivity. And then also she would like to know, how can you create boundaries, protect your energy, and deal with anxiety as an empath?
Okay, so I think that the 100% is going to be you trusting and deciding that for yourself. There's a lot of, we'll talk about some of the things and attributes. So there's also some quizzes and things online, where they might ask you 20 questions, and you'll start to say, I know this was how it was for me, because I'd never heard that term before. Highly sensitive, empath, I didn't know, right? So I began searching, and I would check off all the lists. Highly sensitive people are more reflective. They're great. They can get overwhelmed easily, or all the different things that there are. are. So really, it's going to be a self-assessment. I don't think, it's not a blood test we can take. So it really is more about, does this really resonate with my being? And if you're called to it, I would say most of the time you're kind of drawn to this information. People are. And, and I think it's also a range, right? I believe we all, as spiritual beings and human beings, we're spirit and body. In that way, we have the ability to cultivate our sensitivities. However, empaths tend to have a lot of very specific, experiences, both on the positive and negative aspects of it, that kind of pinpoint that, hey, this really resonates for me, and I resonate with what these people are talking about. And so it really is, in that way, I think, an internal decision to label yourself in that way. And really, labels are just labels, right? So we can talk about similar things. So if you're resonating, and some people, there's, like I said, a range of sensitivity for people. So when we're on that spectrum, is the information that's coming through resonating for you? Is it supporting you in that way? And I believe that the things that we're talking about would support anybody, but it will be very essential and life-changing as a sensitive to be able to manage their sensitivities with, and also not to feel alone and crazy. Like you were saying earlier, Debbie, oh, you're too sensitive, you're too this, you're too that. And it's like, oh my gosh, it starts to feel wrong about it, when really you kind of can change that mindset and realize, no, this is just who I am and how I am. And there's other people in the world like this too. And that in and of itself is healing. And then you can learn to manage those sensitivities, which I believe was the second part of the question. We did talk a ton about this in the first call. So I think that you'd have a more full answer and a lot of tools to utilize if you haven't listened to the actual interview. But with sensitives, it really is about doing the daily practice. If I could give one tip, it would be just connecting with oneself and your body each day, each morning, and having that cognizance of who you are, and having that grounding ritual of really of allowing yourself to release and reset each day, because otherwise you will have a hard time recognizing what's yours and what others, which is then it's difficult to create a boundary, right? So getting to know and connect with yourself each day, and cleansing rituals, which I teach and do through meditation, right? I think meditation is probably one of the best things you can do as a proactive way to clear your energy and reset it each day. Just like taking a shower, it's like energetically clearing your space each day as an empath will change your life for sure.
Because I think when you're in a situation where you're surrounded by people all the time, and you don't have that, like suppose you live in a multi-family living situation, and you're surrounded by people all the time, and you really don't have much of a break from other people's energy. How do you really delineate? Because a lot of times it is separating yourself out and getting that break from people, that you're able to kind of come back into your own, as opposed to if you're always surrounded by other people. How do you do that?
That's a very good point, especially in households. And I see this in relationships a lot, where it's like, oh, it's just one big energy enmeshment,
right, exactly.
Your partner's like, who's me? Where's the lines here? So
right.
I think, connecting. So one thing that actually just popped to mind that I saw intuitively to share was, when you connect with yourself, so just taking a moment each day and just really breathing into your body, connecting with your body. The TLC body meditation we talked about on the last call would be a great exercise. It takes just 5 minutes. And then you can even just rub your hands together. So once you connect, here's me, myself, my body. I know that this is my energy. If I start to call my awareness there, and then you can rub your hands together, and just literally, it's almost like, defining your aura. Our aura and our energy as empaths sometimes goes out all over the place in order to almost create space to feel safe. So energetically, sometimes we can get very scattered out. And as an empath, if we start to first connect with our body, in that way, your intention is calling your energy back home to your body. And then you can actually go a step further by just like putting your hands together. When you rub them, it activates the hand chakra. And since sensitives are typically feelers, you might just have that intention that you're just calling your aura back around you. So you can do this kind of imagination that it's like an egg shape all around your body that's about arm distance. And it's like whistling for your dog, right? It's like, come on, aura, come on, energy, come on back. And just start to define your space around you in that moment. And I think that is one way to start the process of defining your energy and keeping your energy field around you in that way. Grounding is also very important to the earth, because that will help you. The earth's gravity will then act like a vacuum to
Right.
help to release other people's energy. And that makes more space for you to call and have your energy present in this moment. And then that way you start to have that sort of parameter, if you will, of your energy that can still share space with people, but not have to be energetically enmeshed.
So let me ask you a question. My understanding is the energetic field goes out 6 feet all around. So are you saying for someone who's highly sensitive or an empath, is theirs going out further, or is it just more scattered? Like,
Well,
what does that mean per se?
I think not, I don't think that, I think everybody has an aura, an auric field, whether you're sensitive or not.
Mhm.
And most of the time people's energy is just all over the place. And sometimes people do it for like the means of wanting to control or dominate a situation. They'll put their energy out in, if you're reading it clairvoyantly, right? And then there's also that way that we, as a sensitive, will often send our feelers out. Is it safe out here? What is the energy out there in the room? Like first, for instance, I grew up in a household where my parents were fighting a lot. So as a sensitive, I think I wouldn't know I was doing this, but on an energy level, my energy was kind of going to check out the energy everywhere.
Right.
Is it okay out there?
Right.
Is it good to go? And then we take our energy just gets fragmented. I think this is true for everyone.
Mhm.
But as a sensitive, I think that sometimes we'll want to put our energy out even kind of wider, just to kind of cast net and say, I don't like, and the intention is almost like, I'm trying to create my space for myself because I feel claustrophobic because I'm inundated with everybody's stuff. At the same time, when we spread
Right.
our energy out and we're not grounded, we're actually just now taking it and collecting everybody else's energy in the whole field or the whole neighborhood, right?
Right.
So in a perfect world, your aura might be this way, but when you're reading people's energy, it's not typically that way. Energy is fragmented in the future, the past, it's all over the place. And so
Mhm.
that's where reconnecting with yourself each day and just sort of starting to just kind of call your energy around you. It's not like you're going to shrink up too tight. Your soul's pretty smart. It's just a matter of having that conscious connection of bringing your energy back around
Right.
your field so that it's not as fragmented. And then you're actually becoming a more powerful beacon, right? When we have our soul's energy is very high vibrational. And if we're learning to ground our energy and elevate and embody really that higher divine essence, this is how I start to teach, the protection aspect of things with, as an empath, is elevating, learning to have your higher energy field within your body actually elevates your energy. And then you're not as susceptible to have to take in and take on everybody else's stuff. Okay.
Yeah. And so, that brings up a really good point about, when you're in these kind of environments and, you are a high vibrational being, and other people are sensing that and they're drawing on it. And so then you have other people who maybe see that light, they want some of that. And then you get the cords and you get those kinds of things, which as an empath, it makes it even more challenging to separate yourself away from all of that. Right. And so it becomes a little bit, it's a process, right? It's definitely a process.
It is the process, that's for sure. Because really, nobody can cord into us unless, this is the thing that sometimes it's like, what? Just bear with me. Nobody can really cord into us unless we're allowing it. The thing is, we're usually very unconscious to allowing it. And so I like to look at, like, when we're doing our inner child work, when we're going along our spiritual journey, when we have the epiphanies and the awarenesses, every step of our healing process, we're starting to let go of some of the plugs and the areas that they can actually put their energy into, right? For instance, a lot of times we have a lot of programming, as a society, often around the more that we, the codependent exchange of love, right? So if I have to give to my detriment in order to receive. And so if we have this guilt that, we have to give to others before we receive, and we perceive unconsciously even somebody who's in pain needing some of our light, well, of course I have to. If I'm a good person, then I have to give up my energy. So the more that we clear these false beliefs, these wounds, these programmings, these things within us, then there's less plug points, and in your vibration is consistently elevating, right? People are talking about shifting from the 3D to the 5D. Well, there's a kind of a there's a turning point. It's almost like when you first have an awakening of your sensitivities, it feels like it gets worse before it gets better. But that's really short-lived if you learn tools and processes to move through it. It's just you're being more aware now of probably what you were numbing to before. So it's like,
Right.
oh, wow. But when you start doing the healing process, slowly but surely your vibrations rising, you're less available to allow others to come into your field. So it is a process that gets easier over time. And absolutely, you can be very intentional with that. And that's the types of tools and processes I definitely teach and work with people on, because it is a process. It is a process. It's incremental.
Yes, it definitely is. It definitely is. Okay, I want to take a quick jump back. So we have Sheena here also saying hello, and Kieran is saying that that information was very helpful and insightful. So she's very grateful for that. She's going to go back to the first conversation that we had and get more information there. And now Alicia is asking, by multifamily, are you referring to only when you're sharing space with others? Or does that include negatively or positively being affected by neighbors in condos or apartments where you may not interact with those people, but you're physically close, as in like a neighboring unit?
I think that's a great question. I think it's both. I think that there might be different reasons. So this is actually a really great, so let's just kind of break that down a little bit. I think sometimes with family, with friends, with people that we're close with, we have sort of these unconscious healing agreements. It's like, well, you're my daughter or you're my love. And so I can give up a little bit of my energy to you. Like sometimes we have a little bit stronger unconscious healing agreement, which is my term for the energetic aspect of that codependency happening, right? It's sort of like the energetics of the codependency playing out. Mm-hmm. So whether the person's in close proximity or not, that can still be happening from across the globe. It really, if your family lives in another state, it could happen. If they live in your home, well, and you're interacting with them every day, it's definitely could be happening, right? Now, stepping back to the other aspect, absolutely, your neighbors can have an effect on that, right? Even the global, this is where I think a lot of empaths and sensitives really kind of woke up this year, because it got so like a pressure cooker intense because of the global pandemic, right? All the fear and all the judgments and all of everything, all the chaos became, it doesn't matter if you're hiding in your house, which many of us probably did, because it's like, I don't want to go out there. You're still feeling it because it's in the air. So your neighbors can absolutely have a high impact on that, which it's interesting. We just talked about that this week in two of my classes. We did a let's reset our energy and let's look at owning not only our own physical space, but our energetic space. And as we move into the holidays too, thinking of that in real time, really considering having those boundaries and then clearing the energy back out when the family goes home. Even though you love them, they can take their energy back with them. And people don't tend to have that energy etiquette. They don't realize that sometimes all that can still be lingering. So I think everything applies that I teach in terms of grounding and releasing your energy each day. I do that with my home and environment in the same way, because those lines can get crossed for sure. Yeah.
That's really important that you mentioned that going into the holidays, because we are going to have that. And, that makes perfect sense when you actually sit down and start to think about it. Why are the holidays in some ways wonderful for people? And then the holidays can just be so overwhelming. You have people who, they're so excited to get together with their family, and then they get together and they're like, oh my goodness, I just need to get away. Like, I need to go outside. I can only spend so long together. And here's the piece of that a lot of people don't consider is the entwining of all of the energies and the differences in the frequencies and the resonance. And then you add into that the sensitivities of the empaths and the highly sensitives, and with everything, it's getting like, oh my goodness, it can be overwhelming. So, if you have not watched the video, I'm going to tell you right now, go back to watching that video, because Jen gives incredible information and tells you how to work through some of that. And that's going to be so important in the holiday season, especially for people who are empathic. But I wanted to ask you a quick question about, oh, wait a minute, hang on, let me quickly respond back to this. So, okay, so Alicia, let us know if we've covered that. And then Risa's saying that it's both for her because she protects her energy, for example, because her neighbor is negative. And so she's dealing with that all the time. But so we've talked about when we're feeling it. So what else? So let's take the next step. What's the next of the 5 steps? Is it clairaudience, or what's the next piece in that?
So another way is, clairaudience, so hearing, right? So this can be your ability to hear as part of your throat chakra, actually. It's housed in your throat chakra, which is connected to your whole communication center here, right? We have our telepathic channels, which is where we hear clairaudiently, spirit, whether we're hearing our own inner voice, our angels and guides, our passed over loved ones, ancestors, or source directly, right? However you're tuning in, even nature, right, has messages for us. So sometimes this is where we're hearing on a clairaudient level. However, you can definitely have your messages and signs coming in from your guides and such through this intuitive ability by overhearing. So sometimes spirit will use either earth angels, we'll call them, or people, right, to say something in a way for you to hear, right? So you could be actually overhearing. Sometimes have you heard a song before on the radio, and then all of a sudden it just kind of like this illuminates of one phrase that you just needed to hear in that moment to give you that inspiration or validation, right? So we can overhear with our physical ears, but it's really part of our clairaudient ability as well to kind of pick up on that subtlety that, hey, this is something for me to pay attention to, right? That illumination of this is a message for me. So that's a very powerful.
Is that something, so is that also something that as an empath, you might have a stronger sensitivity in that way as well?
I think that we're all intuitive beings, right? So whether you're highly sensitive or empathic, we're all intuitive beings. And so I feel that our ability to be kind of tapped in is turned up a bit louder than others as well. So I think accessing any of your gifts. Now, as an empath specifically, that's more of your clairsentient ability, the feeling energy and emotions of others. That's more rooted in your sacral chakra, although some people feel it in their gut and their solar plexus or their heart or their body. You know, you kind of feel, you can get messages through your body in many ways. So it's not necessarily related to the feeling aspect as much, but I do feel that as an empath, when you're grounding your energy, you're already tapped into so much more of your intuitive, all of your gifts become more easily accessible.
Yeah, I was just interested to know, because one of the things as I've been working on my own gifts, one of the things that I do notice is with my ears, I actually feel when there's an energy coming in closer to me. I can actually sort of feel like this, I don't know what it is. It's a little bit of a tightness more in my ears that I can kind of just sense, or a tweaking of a frequency maybe is probably the better way. And it feels a little bit tighter. So I was just wondering if that's more that sensory thing, if that's just across the board, doesn't matter, empath or not.
Yeah, no, I think that is a sensory thing, but I think it's interesting how you bring it up though, because there's sort of like a combination, like our gifts will start to really work together and backboard off each other. So you're going to get a sense of clairaudient is hearing, but then you're very sensitive with your that sensory of feeling, right? And so you're noticing the air pressure and reading the energy through that way. So I see that the gifts really all work together in tandem, and they'll work a little bit differently for others. Like we typically have 1 or 2 of our gifts that are most naturally innately open for us, and all of them can be developed. Now I find this isn't a hard fast rule by any means. However, I have noticed that a lot of empaths are the feelers, right? And then cultivate a strong knowing, which is their crown chakra, which we could talk about in a few minutes. Because they end up working together. It's kind of like, oh, the feeling is too much, so I'm going to disconnect from my body. So now I have to know what I was feeling instead. Does that make sense? So your body, empaths require us to be in our body, and we have kind of I don't want to say a love-hate with our body, but we don't stay in it a lot. We're kind of up here where it feels more comfortable. And so tuning into like, I'm going to just know what I'm feeling instead of having to feel the fullness of that right now.
I know that very well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely something that I can relate to, because I think I've gone through most of my life outside of my body a lot more than inside, and a knowing of emotion versus an actual feeling of it in my body. And for a while there, wasn't sure what that actually felt like. And then suddenly, as I came in more into that, the floodgates opened, and that's a whole nother concept and a whole nother discussion. What happens when the floodgates open? So, but yes, very much so. I can attest to what you're saying. That's definitely true. Very
Yes.
true.
And then quick, we'll say for somebody that says, what do I do when the floodgates open? Feel it and let it release, right? The resistance of not feeling is really what keeps the energy stuck. If we can just embrace what we're actually feeling, accepting what is, it will move through. So
Right.
trust that.
Right. Because it is that piece that you have to, when you've suppressed it for so long, you're not feeling it. And then if you want to overcome that and you want to get to the other side, you actually have to allow yourself to feel that. And sometimes it's not pretty, but you have to just allow it and run through it.
And it will move through very quickly. It's interesting. Sometimes we hold it in play because we're kind of like, I don't want to feel it. Do I feel? Oh, I feel it. I don't want to feel it. And we kind of just keep it kind of doing this thing. But when we learn to just ground, give it to the earth and release and just really accept, it can move through in seconds, minutes. I mean, it can really, really move through quickly. It might take a little more than that. Just know that, yes, it's all a process and a journey, but
it is. And it's happening for a reason that way. I mean, it's if you didn't feel emotions and you've kind of been running from that for however long, well, there was a reason that was in play for that period of time. And there's a reason why you're feeling them now. And so, it could be that this was just that time to open up and awaken and get to that place. And so that's a beautiful unfolding in and of itself. So, allowing yourself that journey, that experience, and whatever that is. So that's beautiful. So next, you were saying about the crown chakra and talking about that. How about we go there?
The crown chakra is your ability to know. And so this one I find typically can almost be one of the most difficult ones for people to trust. We'll talk about seeing in a minute, but the feeling has something visceral. Hearing, again, is somewhat visceral. Visuals are something to hold on to. A knowing is one of those informations that just you just know what you know, but you don't know how you know. Sometimes it's part of our channeling ability. It's part of the crown chakra. Claircognizance is the actual term. It's in your crown chakra. It's that communication between yourself and your spiritual self, your higher self, source, your angels and guides. So it really is that chakra that helps to translate and buffer that higher information into your knowing. And sometimes we get these epiphanies, or people will talk about downloads. Oh, I just got a download. This is how we start to channel information for programs. That's how I do my programs. Or you just might have like all the puzzle pieces just come together. Often this will happen for people right upon waking. You have a clarity. If you've been struggling with a decision, and sometimes I'll pray on it, or just set my intention to really just have that clarity upon waking before we have too much other cluttered information in our mind happening. We just have that clarity of that sense of our knowing what we actually want to do, right? In that way. It can come for people sometimes in the shower, or for me when I'm driving in a car on a long road trip. We're kind of in that light trance state where we can allow the information to freely flow through us, because our mind are not over occupied in that moment, and we just receive this insight. It's kind of like that epiphany light bulb moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's so beautiful to be able to access that way. And so I know a lot of times people will question that, as you're saying, more than anything, because if you're feeling it, you're sensing it, but then you're knowing something, but you're not sure where it's coming from. And do you really know it? And is it true? That really becomes one of those trust things, I think, where is that something where you really need validation of what it is that you think you know? Do most people feel like they have to have that validated, or is there just automatic trust in that?
No, I definitely think it's a process of cultivating trust. I think cultivating trust really in all of our intuitive gifts, for sure. And I think the knowing is definitely one of those that you just cultivate trust through trial and error in some ways. And we'll talk, I want to share about the seeing, and then I'll kind of talk how they come together and how you can start to cultivate that trust, because it really is in just first of all, having the awareness of choosing to connect and be open to your intuitive gifts, right? Asking and connecting on that regular basis, and then taking action from that. If you're feeling that intuitive nudge, it's about taking the actions that it's guiding you towards, right? So otherwise we don't know. The validation will come and we'll start to hone in more and more and more on what is our true information, our intuitive knowing versus our thoughts thinking, which is actually kind of a sidebar of that. But just what is a true knowing? What is a true intuitive hit that's coming through that I can trust? And you won't know if you never take action on those things. It's like, well, you won't really know. But I suggest doing it on the daily. Because that's when it's in the small steps and the little day-to-day things of just playing with asking, well, what's the quickest way to get here? Where's the quickest parking spot? Where, what's the little things that I can do? Which is going to be the fastest line, and just see, do I feel drawn there? Do I see that number 5 line? Like what is it calling you towards? And just, starting to really play with it, and the little things actually will give you that trust muscle to be built, so that when you have to make a big decision or you have to take a leap of faith in a certain direction, you have built that communication with your intuitive senses enough to be able to trust and leap. But it is something that you build over time, for sure.
I love that, because in truth, it is a big part of, like, for instance, something comes to you and you're like, oh, I should call so-and-so. But then you don't do it because you're, I don't know, you either negate it or something else is coming up. And then a little bit later, you find that somebody was trying to reach you and they weren't able to reach you for whatever reason, but you had the sense that you should have called them, but you didn't do it. So it's interesting when you look back. A lot of times it's 20/20 hindsight, right? That's how you get the validation that, oh, I guess I really should have paid attention to that, because that was something that I should have done in that moment. So it's interesting when you look at it from that perspective, but it is really, I think, tuning in so much so to those little messages. And once you're trusting and you're listening and you're following, that they do just get more and more and more and more, because you're basically saying to, God, source, universe, okay, yeah, I'm ready. Give me more. Because you're actually following through and taking each next step.
Yeah. And even what you said just there is great, because in hindsight, you're still learning, right? Even if we don't listen, sometimes it's in that act that we can go, oh, okay, so the next time I get something like that, maybe I will. So in that way, it's still a learning for you of recognizing, oh, right, that wasn't intuitive hit. I wasn't just thinking, that was actually, maybe that person's thinking of me. And I feel like telepathically, they were probably pinging you, and you start to become aware, you don't realize it, and things like that, for sure. So in hindsight, it is just a matter of just, being gentle with yourself in the process and really taking all of it as information, because the more that you have the awareness of that, the next time you're going to be more apt to recognize that. And then the validation will come, because, a lot of times I'll have a friend, we ping each other telepathically all the time. And we can have this conversation. I realize you can't have that with everyone, but it's like, oh, it's like, oh my gosh. And we've been trying to, and it's like, and then all of a sudden she'll pocket dial me, and it's like, oh wait, now the angels are helping us get connected. We start cracking up at the time, because we've both been thinking of each other, because we're picking up on each other's telepath, whoever starts it. Right. And so it's just all awareness. It's all playing a game. It's just setting the intention to be open and asking, I want to have these loud, clear signs I can easily understand. Guide me to be in my higher path today, and show me the signs to take, right? And then you start paying attention and playing with that in the little day-to-day things. And you'll be amazed at how much more in synchronicity, how much more in flow, how much more things will just start to seemingly fall in your lap. But really, it's because you're tuning in and you're following, and you're following where you're called to go. This happens for shopping with me all the time. I'll come across the perfect thing at the perfect time, because I've been putting out there. Right. It's all of a sudden it's like, oh, I just landed at the right store at the right time with this, and it's like, boom. Thank you. Actually, I was my feelers were tracking me there, right? You know what I mean?
Right. You were tapped in. You were paying attention. You were tapped in, and you were drawing that to you. Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? You hit on something about people are always connecting in that way, and they may not even recognize it, but that it happens all the time with people, where you'll you'll pick up the phone, somebody's there on the phone, or you were thinking of something and suddenly they're on the phone, somebody's calling you. And I had that happen to me yesterday. I just said, oh, you must have just been reading my mind because I was just thinking of you as your phone call was coming in. So, I think it happens a lot more than we're aware of, or maybe that we're paying attention to. So but it is that process of being aware, being mindful, and paying attention. So there's a lot of beauty in that. We have one more question here from Kieran again. She's asking, is being an empath, a part of your soul imprint? Oh, that's interesting. The way you've been through all your lives, or is it more like a soul contract or karmic for a certain lifetime where you've decided to feel this way and be like this for a reason?
I believe that we enter into each soul, like each lifetime. As a soul, we're all the psychics, right? All of the abilities is really who we are as spirit. We're all very much at 100% accessible to all of our gifts in that way, I believe, as spirit, because really a spirit, when we become body, all of our gifts are just ways that we communicate with the unseen world, right? It's our human vantage point connecting with that larger version truth of who we are. So at a soul level, I believe we all actually would have access to these things, and that we likely choose in the lifetime what we want to master through. And it might be several lifetimes in a row that we're mastering certain concepts and things that we want to work through. But I do believe that we choose our family, we choose, kind of our theme for that lifetime. What is our big, some of our big things that I want to work through? Is it going to be about me feeling disempowered so I can find my power or find my voice, or, what are some of the things? And so therefore we'll choose, what we want to come in to experience that as the way that we're going to evolve our soul into that level of mastery in that area. And so I think in that way, you've chosen to come through more sensitive in this way, likely because it's going to have, that opportunity and that catalyst for transformation and expansion for you. Right.
Or be more supportive for you in whatever experience it is that you've chosen for yourself in this lifetime.
Yeah.
So absolutely. Okay. So what do we have next? We have clairvoyance. Is that right?
Yeah. So clairvoyance would be seeing, right? So clairvoyance is it's your third eye, your sixth chakra. It can be called different names, but your clairvoyance is your ability to clear seeing. It's seeing energy. This can really be a lot of different things. Again, with your eyes closed, some people will see, like a snapshot or almost like a movie, or just even like an image or a symbol or color. It's also tapped into part of your dream space. So when you're in that lucid dreaming space, that's part of your clairvoyance being activated. Part of your ability there. And it might just be, you can also be, sometimes with your eyes open, right? You might either see orbs of light. Have you ever seen the little orbs of light? Like there's spirit around, being able to see energy. And this is like clairaudient. And this is one of the ways I would say I get some of my most signs when I'm just walking through my waking day that help me kind of find my alignment. And that is by visually kind of being drawn to something. For instance, you might be driving down the street and I was driving, sometimes something will just illuminate out at you. Like I'll go down the street. I've seen the billboard, like it's something about a clear channel, right? I'm not talking about spiritual stuff, but it's like, popped out at me, like, it was popping out at me when I was kind of not owning my channeling abilities, it was like, I drive by and I see clear channel all the time, this huge billboard, or as I was driving, I was ignoring my angel's guidance on helping me with what I was asking for, which we can do, free will, right? And anyways, I look at this big O tire sign and it says, get your alignment now. I was like, oh yeah, get out of my head, ground, hand it over.
Right.
And so it's like, you can see visually something, or maybe a post in the Facebook feed caught your attention. So pay attention for the subtle illumination is the best way I could kind of describe it, where your intuition is drawing you to recognize or see something. They'll guide you on your computer a lot of times too. If you're really setting the intention for information about something, or the best place, or even the best plumber. I mean, it could be the little things, use it for everything. Set your intention to be guided, and then just let it go and let it kind of pop up, and you'll see like where you're drawn to through the different subtleties of your senses. And really they can all play together. So my suggestion is that you start each day just ask for the loud, clear signs I can easily understand, right? Whether you're saying this to the universe, your higher self, your angels and guides, right, to really help me align with my higher path today and start creating that, cultivating that conversation with the universe, start cultivating that connection with how your intuitive senses work for you, and validate them when they happen, because we can easily blow them off as coincidences, like Debbie was saying, and just invalidate them. But the more that we actually validate, and have our awareness and of that experience, the more you open the floodgate for it to come in through that channel. And recognize if you get the synchronicity of a sign, maybe, I mean, you don't have to wait for 3 times. You can get an intuitive knowing the first time. But if you're getting a message 3 different ways, start to pay attention. If you start hearing something 3 times or more, like maybe you overhear about a certain book, maybe you're wanting to develop your intuition. You overhear about a book. Then you're going through Facebook and you see the book, and somebody's talking about the book, and then all of a sudden you go into Barnes and Nobles and the book's sitting there. It's like, look at the book. The
Books everywhere.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
It's really that it comes in, and it will keep coming in because it's trying to encourage you to take an action. So the only way to really, follow the breadcrumbs really to manifest what you want in life and be that conscious creator, by asking and then receiving the intuitive guidances and taking the steps. As a highly sensitive and empathic person, you already have those abilities tapped wide open. It really is just a matter of tuning in. And I do believe we can all cultivate them, but you'll find that once you learn to ground and clear your energy and just begin playing with it, it's already right there. It's already right there. You just have to develop that trust.
And I think at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to, is it not? It's the trust factor, because I love how you shared that, because I've never really had anyone say about clairvoyance that it's most of the time when people think about clairvoyance, they're thinking about, I'm able to see things, I'm able to see the unseen, or I'm able to see a story in my head, or I'm able to see something like that. But I love how you share the piece of you're actually seeing things that are presenting themselves, whether it's something on your feed, something that you're seeing as a sign, something like that, but it's something that's more popping out at you or grabbing your attention, as opposed to what most of the time when we think of clairvoyance, it's that woo-woo piece of, I can see spirit, I can see this, that type of thing. So I love how you brought that in.
Yeah. And I would say that that's probably the one, when I've done polls in my group, a lot of times it's like the one that, I ask, well, what one do you want to learn how to develop most, or which one do you feel most blocked in? And clairvoyance typically as a lot of the ones that people maybe don't feel they have as much access to, or are interested in learning because they don't have access to it. Maybe like they do feeling or hearing or something like that. And really there's, for an empath, I think, for anybody, I think this is all true, of course, but for an empath, I feel like learning to develop your clairvoyance is probably one of the biggest gifts you can give yourself, because beyond everything I just said about it, in terms of how we can use it to guide our life, it's the space of spiritual truth and neutrality. It's a space to see things from a spiritual perspective and bird's eye view, and not have to be all up in the emotion of it in order to try to make a decision about something. When we are emotionally charged on fear, it's hard to connect with your intuition. When you learn to develop being actually grounded and tuning into your clairvoyant center, you're now in the space of spiritual truth and neutrality that allows you to be the observer of your life, of your choices, of your decisions, so that you're making it from a true intuitive basis versus your mind or your emotions or your fear or your judgments. You're in the space of seeing truth. And that is one of the biggest gifts that you can have as an empath, so that you can feel liberated from having, and especially with shadow work. Because not that I'm definitely a proponent of not avoiding your feelings, but if you have to go in and feel the depths of something that's very deep, dark, or intense for you, you'll likely scapegoat and only go so far. You'll just be bouncing in and out of how deep can you heal that? Where when I train people to really look from their 6th chakra at the same energy that maybe if they were trying to access it through their empathic ability would be too overwhelming and they'd avoid it. But from here, you can see it and not be afraid of it and not be overtaken by it, to clear the energy so that you can now embody more of yourself and actually access more of all of your abilities. Does that make sense? So it's huge. It's a chakra that's very under, it's like, I think people think, either I'm visual or I'm not. There's so much more to it that is highly empowering for people, for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is so helpful what you shared. And I think it's so important that people know that. We have one more question, and then that's all we're going to be able to take today. And it's from Debbie. She's asking, is there a way I can take the edge off of how sad or concerned I get for others? My emotions sometimes feel like they are consuming me to a point that she wants to just pull the covers up over her head and hide.
Yes, on my heart goes to you because I know that feeling for sure, especially when it's your loved ones or just the state of the affairs of the world sometimes can be overwhelming for empaths, right? So I think first and foremost, it is around, I would listen to the interview if you hadn't, because we talked a lot about how to really ground your energy and clear your energy and start to kind of have your own kind of bubble, if you will, because the first thing is we have to it feels like when we get energetically enmeshed with people, it feels that much more overwhelming. So the first thing just to kind of relieve that is to alleviate some of the actual overwhelm of running somebody else's emotions through your body, which is probably happening to a degree, right? So from that space, when we're not so overwhelmed, I think it's just recognizing that, this is what I say, sometimes when, like children, it's hard with your children, right? You love your children, you want them to do well. What if they're in a point in their life and they're making choices? You're just like, oh, not, what? It's easy to kind of go there. But really, I like to have the perspective of each of us we're all very capable, right? Being able to view the world and people from the perspective that we are all individual divine sparks of God, right? We all are very capable and we all came here to learn and grow in different ways. And so when we look at somebody and we're overwhelmed in that way, we're really looking at them from their limited human circumstances vantage point. So what I invite people to do is look at them, pull back and look at them and say hello to them as a spirit, say hello to them as their capable self, as their soul self, as the person and the being that came here and chose these experiences to grow through. Seeing them from that higher perspective actually allows them to remember themselves as well, which will often actually help them step into who they truly are, who they're meant to be. And when we can really look at people as capable in that way and kind of talk to them on that spiritual level, they'll rise into it in their own time and space. I think the other thing to remember is that everyone's on their own timeline. This was a lesson I learned with my daughter, because when I had my awakening, she was already 13 years old. And I had shown her repeating cycles of unhealthy relationships, much like I grew up. And I was like, oh crap, I taught her, I gotta hurry up and fix myself so she doesn't have to do all this, right? And here she was 18, dating basically her father, and I was like, oh no, who was just it was an abusive cycle, right? And I was like, oh no. And then she had to talk with me as a spirit. And I saw her, I remembered this, to look at her as a soul and I'd speak to her higher self and I'd surrender it to the angels, and she said, Mom, she's like, I'm going to be fine. This is my soul's path. Like, I'm going to go mess around for a few years and I'm going to learn my lessons and I'm going to do my things, but I'm going to be okay. Basically, trust me to be okay. And when you can acknowledge people from that place and realize that, who knows, maybe this hardship they're in is exactly what their soul created, that perfect storm for them to elevate. Right? That's often what was our catalyst. And so sometimes when we're feeling that overwhelmed, there's also a part of us that might need to heal deeply about what they're reflecting for us too. Like for me, she was a reflector of that 19-year-old girl who was so disempowered. And when I started feeling like I was watching that version of myself in her, I didn't realize I had more of myself to heal too. So I hope some of that insights help. There's lots I could say there, but
yeah, that's huge. I think that was enormous. And I know that you have a hard stop in just a couple minutes. So I want to thank everyone for all their questions. And I want to open the floor for you, Jen. What do you have going on? What would you like to share with everyone? How they can connect with you? Any programs, any offerings that you have coming up?
Yes, I would just love to connect with you. I'm very active in my Facebook group, the Soul Inspired Leaders Collective Facebook group, where I do all kinds of trainings and show up there doing individual readings, sometimes full moon circles, all kinds of things. So if this topic resonates for you, I love supporting people in that group in a big way. Next week, I have some fun specials coming up for Black Friday week. I put together some amazing bundles at the lowest price. You'll see some very inexpensive from workshops, some free things as well. well. So there'll be free things all the way through different levels of digital courses where I teach empaths how to be empowered with their gifts. There's going to be a special for my energetic mastery program and all of the other workshops I've done throughout this year. So you want to stay tuned for that if you'd like to have some empowering information at some great prices.
Well, Jen, you happen to be one of the most generous people that I have encountered in my experience. You are always giving things freely. You're always trying to assist people. And so I have so much gratitude to you for all that you are doing to support all those people in need. And clearly people who are empathic do struggle in a lot of ways. And so the tools that you offer are so helpful. And I really encourage everyone to really download your free gifts. Watch the videos. You offer so much in knowledge to assist people for tools, etc. So please, everyone, do take advantage of that. And again, Jen, I have such gratitude to you. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you everyone for joining us. And if you have any questions, Jen's going to pop in and out of group to try and answer some questions. So if we missed anything or something comes up for you, please feel free to leave a message in group and on this feed, and Jen will get back to you. Thank you so much, Jen. Mwah. To you and to everyone else, thank you. And we will be back again tomorrow with Susan Kennard. Thank you and see you until then. Bye-bye.
Bye.